It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. William Redmond, Deputy Chief of Safety of the United States Air Force Safety Center. Mr. Redmond.
Good morning, Commander, and I'd like to call you Captain Select. Even after that joke, it takes a bold and aggressive leader to tell a joke, okay? So I'm proud of you. Admiral Tedesco, Ms. Craney, Admiral Johnson, who I've known for about 8 or 9 years now, and we've worked a lot of problems across the globe with. It's a pleasure to see everybody. This is exciting for the Air Force. We had our breakout sessions yesterday, and just 3 of the issues that we talked about, which we think are joint issues, are like remote piloted aircraft, unmanned aerial systems, if you will. The Air Force is going to go over 1 million flying hours on there sometime in July of this year. That's a lot of airspace integration that's happening in the area of responsibility. That's a lot of training that has to be done in the stateside, and to work with the Federal Aviation Administration, to work with our sister services in that ought to be a major issue for next year, and we'll go ahead and push that forward. The second thing we look at is we are all trying to develop a more professional force. We have some of the greatest safety engineers, safety technicians, and safety experts in the world. And so that's what I'll talk to a little bit today, but I think that has a lot to do with how do we do classes together? How do we do tracks? The same things Ms. Craney talked about are very interesting to the Air Force. So there's a lot of lessons learned and a lot of best practices that we can share in there. And the third thing I'll tell you about that we think has a joint perspective is risk management. You know, for the Air Force, the ethos is I never leave a wingman behind. For the Army, it's a battle buddy. For the Navy, it's a shipmate. For the Marines, it's a Marine. And that culture holds true across all the services, that you take care of your own and you take care of that. And we do a great job of that in the Air Force at teaching how to be a good wingman. If I go down to basic and I watch them on the obstacle course, what I see is you do it as 2 people. You don't do it as one person. And so we teach that. But where we don't teach it is we don't marry that to personal risk management with the 18 to 24-year-olds or 18 to 26-year-olds that we get in every day. And so we don't teach them how to be safe inside. We teach them how to be safe inside the gate. We don't teach them as well how to be safe outside the gate. And for the Air Force, we lose about 10 to 11 to 1 of our people outside the gate versus combat operations. And so that's a major statistic for us. How do we make them safe? We think it's through personal leadership, teaching personal risk management, and carry that out so that they're teaching that not only as a wingman, but for themselves. And so we think there's lots of lessons learned to be data mined, to be taught as we work with the Navy, the Marines, and the Army on those issues. That gives you 3 on there. I'm going to go into my brief now, and I'll talk. Go ahead. Go back one if you would. Okay, 4. Supposed to be a video there. Okay, we'll play the video at the end. It's a pretty cool video. There we go. These are all real safety events that have happened.
The bottom line up front is the primary cause of the mishap was speed, resulting from the poor decision by the rider to keep up with experienced motorcycle riders in a very challenging riding environment.
That was not a good day to be in safety. Okay, I think that video is worth waiting a couple minutes for. Next slide, please. Here's what we'll talk about today. Next slide. This is our breakdown. There are about 1,700 safety professionals. Some cats and dogs. What I don't have here are the officers. Just like everybody else, we're capped at military professionals that we can bring in. When we look at our professional development, we look at it in 3 groups, and we try to provide some synergy to that. Our officer corps, our non-commissioned officers, and our civilians. The area where we can grow the most, and we have grown the most, is in civilians. That's the same flexibility that the other services have. So as we look at our professionalism, we try to blend that in, and we also try to say, what's the future for professional development of those civilians? I'll give you some ideas in just a minute. I will tell you that we push through about 3,000 students a year at the Air Force Safety Center or road. We do some road shows across the globe, just like everybody else has a global safety commitment on that. And we have our instructors here ran the breakout for the Air Force and do a great job. And we have just recently, in the last year and a half, converted from contractors to civilians, and I will tell you it's been highly successful for us. But we keep them busy. However many courses they're developing, it's not enough, because the thirst for courses, the thirst for education, the thirst for functional training is pretty tremendous out there, right? And you can't get enough, whether it's the latest OSHA lockout, tagout, or whether it's the latest management course. And so that's a place where we think we can team better. And a conference like this, where we get the latest techniques, tactics, and procedures, if I go back to my old weapons officers days, then is outstanding for us. I've had people come up to me and say that they really want to learn how the Army and Navy are doing motorcycle training. That was their purpose for coming here. What a great purpose. I would have paid for that out of my own pocket. It's too late to put a reclama in, okay? Because that can save some lives. We went to school on the Marines and Navy accountability ladder last year. We got our secretary and our chief were enthusiastic about signing an accountability letter. We have seen a decrease in fatalities since that happened, and a decrease in Class A's and B's since that happened, and that's a great thing. Accountability is a part of a safety mishap strategy, isn't it? But how do you teach that? How do you teach that across the board? Because that's not an OSHA class, is it? It's a little bit of a professional development. Next slide. As you can see, the Air Force as a whole, we're better as a force in safety than the Air Force as a whole in professional development toward the bachelor's degree. We're working to do that. We're working with the Army and we're working with the Navy to professionalize that force. We would like to make it a bachelor's degree requirement. Now we'll grandfather everybody through that. But just like we see across the board, and I'll tell you, I'll speak for the Air Force now, in our E8s and E9s, that professionalizes the force, and that helps a lot. Okay. We'd like to have it in safety, but the degree itself is an important professionalism tool that you can use to build a better cadre. Next slide. Here's some of the things that we do. Functional training, we run some OSHA classes. There's 14 classes like Voluntary Protection Program that we put on the GIFCOM Knowledge Management site, if you work that. We also work them through the Air Force. What we foresee is a joint site where you can go to them, and it can be Joint Forces Commands and Serve Responsible for Training, so that you can get as many blended courses, you can get as many certificates as possible. And we're in the process of developing more. You know, we just developed one at the Air Force Safety Center for our crash lab. It takes you through the crash lab and gives you some integral pre-training into how you're going to do our crash lab and work at our 15-acre site on that. I think it's invaluable for the type of blended training that we would like to develop. I've talked about the Air Force Safety Center. We also manage with Texas A&M a series of OSHA classes, and I believe there are 9 of them that we provide to our Air Force professionals across there. We don't always fill the seats. That's available from a joint perspective. So one of the things we'd like to come up with is how do I let the, we do that fairly well with the Transportation Safety Institute in Oklahoma, but we don't do it as well with some of our Texas A&M courses because those courses are already paid for. So there's a sharing that it could occur from a joint perspective to fill seats. And it's always when you can go in with a bigger contract, you can negotiate an efficiency there. So those are some things we can do together. Management training. I will tell you that what we looked at, management training is a key integral part to moving up in the civilian workforce. And so there are a lot of professional development. As a senior safety civilian for the Air Force, I have a little budget that I can send people to. That, we generally spend more money than we have in that. And they haven't caught us yet, so it's a good thing. But I will tell you that it has been, we sent 56 safety professionals. So almost 10% of our force last year to a management or a strategic leadership course. And what that does is that balances. We have that professional degree. We have professional military education, which is very important to our people. We have that functional expertise that I think we do great across the board. Now we need to work on management and strategic thinking. You know, to send somebody to the Harvard School of Executive Leadership for a week or two is well worth it if that person is going to run a safety shop or be a senior civilian in a major command for the Air Force or run a division or be a deputy division chief at the safety center or in the Pentagon for us. That to me is money that I will get back in fivefold over the next 5 years because it changes their thinking, changes the prism they look through, and changes the paradigm. So we support that. And hopefully we can spend all our money this year and ask for more. Don't tell our personnel center I said that, please. All right. I want to foot stomp professional military education. We have a great pathway for, when you look at our officers, about 7% come back into safety with some experience. About 30% to 35% of our NCOs come in there. They have non-commissioned officer training